What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about NIO. I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause some volatility in the stock price, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So NIO did go up 0.25% on Friday. So throughout the day, it did show a lot of signs that it wanted to break out, such as right here. So I'm going to go over the technicals. That'll make a little bit more sense. But looking forward into this upcoming week, we have some pretty big data points. One is right here, so new loans. And so essentially that is going to reconfirm data from last week, because that's going to show if legitimately people are out there expanding the economy, getting loans. And we did have on Thursday, trade of balance came in absolutely kick-ass, no different than the time before that. So came in at 96.1 billion. Forecast of 70. Exports, this is April's data, so keep in mind a lot of the tariffs have already been factored in and fully enforced at that stage. Year over year came in at 8.1, and so honestly, given the forecast was supposed to be negative 2%, that's huge data. Even the imports came in better, and data from Friday, so we did have inflation rate year over year came in below the forecast. In fact, it was negative 0.1 versus 0 the forecast, and then the month over month came in slightly lower, so 0.1 versus 0.2. This data right here in among itself is going to really help next week, starting off on Monday. So this should immediately really push Chinese just EVs and stocks higher. So let me know your thoughts on that. And then as well, our PPI on a year over year basis did come in lower than anticipated. So China's definitely doing something right. If anyone out there says that China isn't, all of their data, unless they're falsifying all this is kick-ass stuff. So this should really help NIO going into this upcoming week. In addition to that though, tariffs. So one thing that really caused these spikes right here was this. So Trump kind of talking about China. And so it looks as though that, because today is the negotiation day, so on Saturday, looks as though the States is kind of their first step is to reduce it to 80. So that's a pretty bold move considering it's 145. So for negotiation wise, that might mean that they could potentially bring it down to 50, maybe on the low end, or even 40. Nonetheless, market is watching this like a hawk, because you're even having some play-by-plays happen. So Chinese and US officials return to Geneva trade talks, venue in Geneva after break. It's kind of funny, even there was a lot of people saying that Chinese and US officials were leaving without notice, and turns out that was just a lunch break. It's just you are legitimately today getting a play-by-play of these negotiations. So that shows the level of importance on both economies. So again, if there for whatever reason is some deal that does come this weekend, you are going to see just NIO and many other Chinese EVs rocket like a crazy person. So let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. Aside from that, going into this upcoming week, 12.65% of the free float is being shorted. It works out to be 201.12 million shares. So kind of surprising, because NIO did, like I said, attempt to really push higher. And so that was kind of touching that 50-day moving average. But you did have shorts return 3.74 million shares on Friday. So kind of continuing this overall downtrend, as you can kind of see right here. So very interesting stuff all in all. So let me know your viewpoint on that. But going into this upcoming week, I would anticipate shorts to continue to return. One, just for face value, the data points. This does show that there's expansion occurring in the Chinese economy. So to really short that is kind of a very bold move. And then aside from that though, if for whatever reason there is some tentative deals between China and the States, even if it's just on some select items, I think that would show a significant level of progress. Then shorts would equally be screwed. So I think they are starting to read between the lines that NIO is ready to move higher. So they obviously have been returning quite a lot. So returning from 15.05, that was April the 3rd, to where they are now. But with it closing on Friday, exactly, I'll give you a quick overview. I think it was for 397. That does mean that the $4 and above strike prices all regrettably are kind of expire worthless. So that's the downside of doing options. But you do have 20,000 at that 350, 728 at that 3. So I'm sure at this stage, because obviously where NIO was closing, market makers already would have started to cover. So most likely a lot of that has already been done, but nonetheless, there still might be a little bit of a rollover. So you might see a nice little spike come Monday as market makers will have to cover those remaining shares, because that 20,000 in open interest does equate to 2 million shares. So again, that could really help potentially starting the push higher. But looking forward into this upcoming week, it is a monthly chain, so very active. So looking at the open interest, you have 17,000 at that 3, 5,000 at that 350, 60,000 at that 4, 45,000 at 450, and then 117,000 at that 5. So this is where you're actually having a very unique circumstance play out. You have a lot of good catalysts that could legitimately push NIO higher, and if so, you do have a lot of crazy walls that could really result in a nice gamma squeeze. So all in all, even if it gets over that $4 mark and it stays above there, close of business day Friday, then that does mean you have roughly around 7.7 million shares that needs to be covered by market makers. So that could really could hit the fan for the shorts. So definitely maybe they're reading between the lines as well, and that's one factor why they are returning. But even if there is, let's say, a deal with China and you see it really push higher to this $5 range, that is where you will see a parabolic type of activity happening. So let me know your viewpoint on that. With it right now at 397, it is trading between these 2 points. So this R1 and the pivot. So 384 is going to be a strong support for you to kind of watch early on in the week. But 438 is going to be the next strong target / resistance point. And in my opinion, I feel like there's definitely a lot more upside than down at given where NIO is at. And I feel like it's just a lot of geopolitical kind of actions that is moving NIO rather than NIO's operations. So even though things have been coming out that are somewhat optimistic, the market is just simply caring about tariffs. I know it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. No new analyst ratings coming out, even articles, not really much coming out from them. I did just check this and there wasn't anything crazy. I don't know what's going on for that. But nonetheless, though, on the actual chart, like I said on Friday, it did really show some signs of breaking out. And so it did bounce off of that 50-day moving average. Historically, that 50-day moving average is a very big deal, and normally does result in shorts increasing, not returning. So Friday was a very all-around abnormal day for NIO. So at the end of the day, going into this upcoming week, if it is able to get above that 50-day moving average, then it's just going to be an easy tack to this 100-day moving average, and then that you have that 200 sitting at roughly 458. So with good news and some good catalysts, you could easily see a very nice breakout. But then again, we've seen that time and time again with NIO, and it always, in one way or another, does get manipulated. So it always just gets dragged down. So it's a very frustrating stock, as I've kind of explained in previous videos, but nonetheless, this upcoming week does seem very, very optimistic. So let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. Give yourself a shout out if you have been buying, if you've been selling. What have you been doing with NIO? And then over and above that, one final thing, if you're looking for some good buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, pop over to my Patreon. Definitely worthwhile to do that. I even listed just recently NIO as a buy because of various circumstances and stuff that I lay out in there. So definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. Link in the description below and also the comments. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.